Let's shift focus back onto this. Members of the presidential security and the media traveling with Cyril Ramaphosa on an Africa peace mission to Ukraine and Russia were grounded in Poland at the weekend. A South African Presidential Protection Services member was also strip searched by Polish police. They wanted to confiscate weapons from the chartered flight. Presidential Protection Services were reportedly warned about custom requirements to carry weapons into Poland. We're now joined by Rory Steyn, a security expert. Rory, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. What we witnessed over the past couple of days, is it unusual, especially when it comes to the aircraft of a president and his contingent, one being searched the way it was and two not being given clearance?
Good afternoon, Dudu, and to everybody watching. Yes, I think it is unusual. I must also countenance that everything I'm going to say is based on my time, which was a long time ago when I was privileged to serve President Mandela. But the reality is that this whole game, if you want to call it that, this whole practice works on reciprocity. And it works like this. If I am traveling to your country with my president, I travel on the understanding that you're in charge of my president's safety and security. But you know that we work with our president on a daily basis. So therefore, you will consult me about likes and dislikes and that sort of thing. And by the way, when the shoe's on the other foot and you come to my country, then you travel to my country understanding that we're in charge, but that you work with the president. So, you know, the Zulus have a wonderful saying, izandla ziyagezana. So one hand really does want the other. It's a matter of mutual consultation, respect, and reciprocity. So in the event that an aircraft carrying a president's entourage of whatever nature, security, diplomatic, personal staff, is not the point, then I think that what has happened is that there's been a breakdown of communication. So when we worked with our president, we as the Presidential Protection Unit, would tell DIRCO, in those days it was still called the Department of Foreign Affairs, we would tell Foreign Affairs how many people are traveling and with what weaponry. Then DIRCO, or Foreign Affairs within their own structures, would contact our embassy or high commission in the country to which we are traveling, and that embassy or high commission will contact the local authorities there to say, these are the people that are coming and these are the weapons that they wish to bring. Can we please receive authorization? And nobody should leave the shores of South Africa without such authorization. I remember in 1997, we were traveling to Edinburgh in Scotland for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. Now, today the Commonwealth is 56 nations. I don't know how many were in the Commonwealth in 1997, but you can imagine the concern of the Brits in this instance, where you've got 50-something nations, security personnel arriving, and they're all armed. So there's got to be some kind of control, and I remember that they only allowed us to bring in 2 firearms. When we landed, they tried to make that only 1, but I held them to the 2 that they had committed to, and they went with that. So that involves serial numbers that are communicated in advance, and all the requisite permissions are obtained. So I don't know why that wasn't done in this instance, because I wasn't there. But that is how we did it back in the day, and I don't see any reason why that would have changed today.
Because also, Rory, there's fear about the 120 members of the President's security group. Again, one is that unusual, having done a security assessment for a head of state that is traveling to a war zone. Can that be justified?
Well, it's completely unprecedented. I have never, ever heard of that large a number of security personnel traveling with our president. And to my earlier point about the host nation being in charge of my president's security, even more so if you're traveling to a war zone, then you have to rely on the knowledge of the country to which you're traveling. Because you can be the best in the world, and we have got some fantastic military and police urban terror outfits. One thinks of our special task force. They're up there with anybody. Our special forces soldiers can hold their own. But you can be the best in the world. It doesn't mean that you're going to be that effective when you travel into a different country. Any country, never mind a war zone. So the reliance on the host nation's security forces is even greater, in my view, when you're traveling into a war zone. So I don't know, because I was not party to that decision. I don't even know what the 120 security personnel's brief was. But I can't imagine that they would be traveling to provide a security contingent to our president in a foreign country. That remains the prerogative and, in fact, the duty of the host nation.
Having done this before, previously, how many security or how much security detail did the former president or the first president of democratic South Africa enjoy?
You know, Dudu, I'm going to decline to answer that question, as I always do. You're not the first one to ask me that. Out of respect for my colleagues that still do this work, it would be inappropriate of me to comment on the numbers around a president, because I don't want to compromise either their safety nor that of our president. So I'm going to decline to answer that, if you don't mind, Dudu, on that basis. Suffice it to say that I've never heard of 120 South African personnel leaving the shores of South Africa for any presidential operation. Yeah.
No problem at all. We understand. Perhaps also because there's quite a lot that has been said about the perception of this, and we're reporting how this has divided opinion in South Africa, with some sectors of society believing, well, okay, let's leave that argument, but take a look at the security argument that, one, could our president have been at risk, right? And number two, what message does this send to not only the world, but to South Africans about our own security detail?
Well, again, I don't have the facts about what was done and what wasn't done, what was applied for and what wasn't applied for. But if those permissions that I spoke of to bring in weaponry were not obtained prior to them leaving, then that is, in my view, a lapse. You shouldn't be leaving. The risk of embarrassing, never mind not being on the ground, but the risk of embarrassing your principal, especially if you think in our day, President Mandela's international image was massively important to us, and we would never have done anything that would in any way seek to diminish or to damage that. So that would be my comment to do. Those permissions needed to have been in place, watertight, signed, sealed and delivered. Whether those were originals or copies isn't the point. They needed to be properly communicated, proper approval obtained prior to them leaving. Otherwise, they shouldn't have taken those weapons, for which there was no prior approval, in my view, with the limited understanding and knowledge that I have of this, because, I wasn't there.
Sure. And I guess we'll also wait for the necessary authorities to give a debrief of sorts, if you will. Thank you very much, Rory, for your time.